The Velari children scattered like startled insects when Eli entered the common area of shelter. 17. Their translucent skin flashed warning patterns, jagged crimson lines, pulsing across their bodies as they abandoned half-eaten meals and rudimentary toys. Some darted beneath tables, others pressed themselves against walls, their 4 eyes wide with terror. The smallest ones emitted high-pitched whistles of distress. "It's just basic conditioning," Dr. Naismith explained, watching the scene unfold from the observation deck. The Velari were systematically taught humans are monsters. Their elders called us pain eaters and soul stealers. Propaganda vids showed humans harvesting alien children for emotions. Eli nodded, his heart heavy. As a trauma specialist with the Interstellar Aid Corps, he'd witnessed countless manifestations of fear, but nothing quite like this. The Colaris War had officially ended 14 months ago, but the psychological warfare continued in the minds of these orphaned younglings. "I've tried everything," said Kira, the shelter coordinator. "Food, bribes, toys, keeping distance. They panic whenever a human enters their space." Through the one-way glass, Eli observed a young Velari with unusual markings silver rather than the typical blue who seemed to be watching the doorway Eli had retreated through, not cowering, but studying. "That's Lumi," Kira said, following his gaze. "She's different, observant, still terrified, but curious too." That night, Eli couldn't sleep. The colonial settlement of New Haven was quiet except for the gentle hum of atmospheric regulators. Outside his window, the planet's 3 moons cast prismatic shadows across the recovery zona, stark contrast to the charred remnants of battle still visible on the horizon. He reviewed his notes on Velari psychology. Communal species, tactile, learners, emotionally receptive to a degree humans couldn't comprehend. Their neural pathways physically changed in response to emotional stimuli. What would happen to these children if they couldn't overcome their fear? Integration would fail. They'd grow up isolated, perpetuating cycles of mistrust that had fueled the war in the first place. In his dreams, Eli saw his childhood dog a rescue that had been abused, that growled and snapped at everyone, until his mother showed him how patience works. Don't chase, don't demand, just be present, be consistent, be gentle. It had taken weeks, but eventually the dog had approached on its own terms. As dawn broke, bathing his sparse quarters in amber light, Eli made a decision. He messaged Dr. Naismith, requesting permission to try a different approach with the Velari younglings. The reply came quickly. "Standard protocols aren't working. You have 1 week." Eli packed minimal supplies: a water bottle, nutrient bars, a small blanket, and his tablet. He dressed in soft, neutral colors, nothing resembling the military uniforms the children might associate with violence. As he walked toward Shelter 17, his mind returned to Lumi's silver markings. In his research, he'd found references to silver-marked Velari possessing heightened empathic abilities. Maybe she was the key, or maybe he was grasping at straws. Either way, he couldn't continue watching those children suffer in fear. "I'm not going to hurt you," he whispered to himself as he approached the shelter door. "And somehow, I'm going to help you understand that." The common room erupted in chaos when Eli entered. Toys clattered to the floor as 27 Velari younglings fled in all directions. Their translucent skin flickered with fear patterns so intense they cast eerie shadows on the walls. 3 supervisors, non-human species, the children tolerated, watched with resigned expressions. Instead of retreating as usual, Eli walked to the center of the room, laid his blanket on the floor, and simply sat down, cross-legged, hands open. On his knees, he settled into a position he could maintain for hours. And then he waited. Through hidden surveillance feeds, the shelter staff observed with skepticism. What exactly is Specialist Dahan doing? Dr. Naismith asked. Nothing, apparently, Kira replied, frowning at the monitor. Literally nothing. The first hour passed in complete stillness. The children remained hidden, occasionally emitting soft clicks of distress. Eli didn't move except to breathe. The second hour brought whispered conversations in the lilting Velari language from behind furniture and air ducts. By hour 3, a few braver younglings peered from their hiding places. Eli pretended not to notice, keeping his gaze unfocused, his breathing steady. His training in meditation served him well now. As dusk approached, shelter staff rotated. Meals were delivered placed just within reach of hiding spots, so the children could grab them without exposing themselves. Eli declined. Food when offered. You can't just sit there all night, Kira protested over his earpiece. Actually, I can, Eli replied softly. Please, trust me. When darkness fell, the room's ambient lighting dimmed to accommodate Velari's sensitive vision. In the gentle blue glow, Eli finally spotted Lumi, the silver-marked youngling, watching him from behind a storage unit. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of analytical thought rather than fear. Midnight came. Most of the children had fallen asleep in their hiding places, their bodies emitting the faint bioluminescence that served as their version of dreaming. Eli's legs had gone numb hours ago, but he remained still, occasionally sipping water. At 03:00 hours, something unexpected happened. Lumi emerged fully from hiding and took 3 hesitant steps toward him. She stopped 10 meters away, her skin displaying rippling patterns of uncertainty. Eli didn't move, didn't speak. Their eyes met in the darkness. A youngling's head tilted. Slightly the Velari, equivalent of a question. Slowly, deliberately, Eli smiled. Not the wide grin humans often used, but a gentle curve of lips that Velari might better understand. Lumi's skin flashed once in alarm, then settled into a tentative pattern of blues and greens. Not fear, but curiosity. She took another step forward. Then another. 3 meters away, she stopped again. Eli could see her trembling. Koreshna Volum? She whispered in her native tongue, though Eli's translator rendered it as, why do you wait? He knew the deeper cultural meaning. Why do you hunt us with patience? Eli's heart broke at the question. Even his stillness was interpreted as a predatory tactic. How deeply had fear been woven into their understanding of humans? I'm not hunting, he said softly. I'm just being here, with you. Lumi's skin flickered with confusion. She retreated several steps, but didn't return to hiding. Progress, Eli thought. Small, but real. As dawn approached, his muscles screaming in protest, Eli maintained his vigil. The first of New Haven's 3 suns peeked over the horizon, sending shafts of golden light through the shelter's skylights. In that golden moment, Eli noticed something remarkable. 3 more younglings had emerged during the night, sleeping on the floor at the edges of the room rather than hiding. And Lumi had fallen asleep just 5 meters away, her silver markings glowing softly in the morning light. Asterisk, by the 3rd day, Eli had become part of the room's landscape. His presence, though still causing visible discomfort, no longer triggered MS panic. He'd maintained his position with minimal movements, accepting only water and nutrient paste. Speaking to no one. His body ached from the sustained stillness. But Eli drew from his training in disaster zones across the galaxy. Physical. Discomfort was temporary. Trust, once built, could last lifetimes. Lumi had become his silent observer, gradually decreasing the distance between them. She now spent hours sitting 10 feet away, studying him with unblinking intensity. Other younglings watched from further distances, their skin patterns showing decreasing agitation. Your vitals are concerning, Dr. Naismith said through his earpiece. You need proper rest. I'm fine, Eli whispered when he was certain no Velari were close enough to hear. Something's happening. They're adapting. That afternoon, Shelter staff introduced a new element: music. Not human music, which might frighten the children, but Valari lullabies recovered from cultural archives. The gentle, atmospheric tones filled the common room. The effect was immediate. The youngling's skin displayed patterns of recognition and comfort. Several began swaying slightly, a Valari expression of emotional release. Eli remained still, but allowed himself to be visibly affected by the music, closing his eyes occasionally, showing the children that the sounds moved him too. Shared appreciation might bridge gaps words couldn't cross. As the third sunset approached, Lumi did something extraordinary. She approached within arm's reach of Eli and carefully placed a small object on the floor before quickly retreating. It was a kritha stone. A smooth, luminescent pebble Valari children traditionally gave to trusted elders. The equivalent of a human child offering a handmade drawing. Eli's chest tightened with emotion. He gently picked up the stone, holding it in his open palm where Lumi could see it. Following Valari custom, he placed it against his forehead for a moment, the culturally appropriate acknowledgement. Lumi's skin rippled with gold flecks, surprise, possibly pleasure. That night, Eli finally stood, his joints protesting after days of immobility. Moving slowly, telegraphing each motion, he stretched. Several younglings retreated to hiding places, but fewer than before. Lumi and 5 others remained visible, watching with cautious curiosity. Eli sat again, this time changing position slightly. He removed from his pocket a small holographic projector and placed it on the floor. With a gesture, he activated it. The image that appeared was simple: Earth's solar system in miniature, planets revolving around a tiny sun. Nothing threatening, just beauty in motion. A reminder that humans came from somewhere, had a home, were part of the same universe. Youngling's response exceeded his hopes. Several crept closer, fascinated by the spinning worlds. Their skin displayed patterns of wonder patches of twinkling light resembling stars. Venus, Eli said softly, pointing to the second planet. Earth, the third. Mars, the fourth. Earth, Lumi attempted, her vocal apparatus struggling with the human word. Eli nodded encouragement. Earth, home. Home, another youngling echoed. From nearby, as the moons rose outside, something profound was happening in that simple room. Language tentative, halting began to flow between species. Not through sophisticated translation devices or diplomatic protocols, but through a shared moment of wonder at tiny worlds spinning in empty space. When Eli finally lay down to sleep that night, he didn't retreat to the staff quarters as expected. Instead, he remained in the common room, making his temporary bed. On his blanket, he awoke hours later to a sensation of warmth against his side. In the dim light, he could make out Lumi's small form, curled up asleep beside him, but not quite touching. Her skin glowed with the gentle blues of peaceful dreams. Across the room, other younglings watched from various distances, some still, hiding, others in the open, evaluating, considering, beginning to hope. Asterisk, on the 5th day, the breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Not from Lumi, who had grown bolder but still maintained careful distance, but from a smaller youngling the staff had named Pix. Eli sat reading from his tablet children's stories from Earth, translated to simple Valari phrases he'd been practicing. 6 younglings sat in a loose semicircle around him, far enough for comfort, but close enough to hear. Their skin patterns showed attentive interest with occasional flickers of apprehension. He read slowly, showing illustrations. A story about animals helping each other during a storm. Creatures different in every way, finding common purpose. Pix, who had always been one of the more fearful children, suddenly rose from his place and approached Eli directly. The room went silent. Even the shelter staff, watching through monitors, held their breath, The small Velari stopped just before Eli, trembling visibly, skin fluctuating between fear crimson and determination purple. Then, with deliberate slowness, Pix extended a four-fingered hand and touched Eli's arm. It was the first voluntary physical contact between a Kono, Velari child, and a human since the war. Eli remained perfectly still, though his heart raced. Pix's touch lingered for 3 seconds before the youngling pulled back, skin flashing with amazement. "Not cold," Pix said in halting standard. "They said humans cold?" Eli smiled gently. "No, we're warm, like you." The impact rippled through the group instantly. 2 more younglings approached, hesitantly reaching out fingers to confirm this revelation. Their skin displayed cascading patterns of confusion and revelation as propaganda collided with reality. Lumi watched from nearby, her silver markings pulsing rapidly. She approached last, but her touch was different, not a tentative poke, but a deliberate press of her palm against Eli's hand. "The stories were wrong," she said, her standard surprisingly clear. "About many things?" "Yes," Eli answered honestly. "Many things." That afternoon, word spread through the shelter. Younglings, who had remained hidden for days, emerged to witness the phenomenon themselves. Some still kept their distance, too traumatized to approach, but they watched with new expressions in their four-eyed, gaze calculation replacing blind terror. Dr. Naismith arrived to observe in person, keeping to the doorway to avoid disrupting. "The fragile new dynamic. Remarkable," she whispered. "Their neurotransmitter levels have completely shifted." By evening, a new ritual had developed. Eli sat in the center of the room with his holographic projector, showing images from across the galaxy, places the Velari children had never seen. Each time he invited questions, answered truthfully, never pushing for more contact than they freely offered. When night fell, something extraordinary happened. Lumi approached with an object clutched carefully in her hands, a traditional Velari Dreamweaver, a simple device that projected the user's thoughts as color patterns. "Show us your world," she requested. "From your mind, not machine." It was a profound request. Velari Dreamweavers were intimate objects, never shared with outsiders. For the children to want to see Earth through his memories, his emotions represented. Trust beyond what Eli had dared hope for, he accepted the delicate instrument, holding it as he'd been taught in cultural sensitivity training. Closing his eyes, he focused on memories of home, not the grand vistas or famous landmarks, but the simple moments that made Earth precious to him. His grandmother's garden in spring, rain on windows, children of different colors playing in a park. The Dreamweaver translated these thoughts into swirling patterns that filled the darkened room. The younglings watched, transfixed, their skin reflecting the colors of Eli's memories. When the final image faded, sunset over mountains, the room remained silent for several heartbeats. Then Lumi spoke, her voice carrying the weight of revelation. "You love your world as we loved ours." Eli nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "Yes, and maybe, someday, you can love this new world too." That night, when Eli prepared his sleeping space, he found it surrounded by younglings, setting up their own rest areas nearby. Not touching. Not yet, but close. Present. Choosing proximity instead of distance. Progress, measured not in diplomatic accords or policy changes, but in the simple geography of trust, the shrinking space between beings. 3 months later, the colonial governor's delegation arrived at Shelter 17 with minimal warning. Officials in formal attire filed into the observation deck, data slates ready to assess the rehabilitation program's progress. What they witnessed left even the most jaded bureaucrats speechless. The common room had transformed. Walls once bare now displayed artwork created by Velari younglings, alongside human children from the settlement. Collaborative pieces showing both species together. Language boards featured words in standard and Velari side by side. Most striking were the children themselves, 27 Valari younglings engaged in normal activities, interacting not just with Eli, but with 3 other human staff members. "Impossible," whispered Colonial Administrator Vargas. "The reports said they were unresponsive to human contact." Dr. Naismith allowed herself a satisfied smile. That was before Specialist Dahan. In the center of the room, Eli sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a mixed group of Vilari and human children. He was reading a story, alternating between standard and Vilari languages. When he gestured dramatically to emphasize a plot point, the children laughed together, the musical tones of Vilari amusement harmonizing with human giggles. Lumi sat at his side, occasionally correcting his Vilari pronunciation. Her silver markings had grown more pronounced, now forming intricate patterns that denoted emotional maturity beyond her years. She wore around her neck a small earth stone Eli had given her, a pebble from his grandmother's garden, his own kritha. Stone offering. "The progress is remarkable," Governor Chun said, reviewing the data. Cortisol levels normalized, integration milestones exceeded, language acquisition accelerated. "How did you accomplish this when the previous team failed?" "He waited," Lumi answered unexpectedly from the doorway, her translator making her voice clear to all. The officials turned in surprise. When others chased, he waited. When others spoke, he was silent. When others left, he stayed. She approached the governor without hesitation, a political gesture that would have been unthinkable months ago. "Our elders taught us humans consume pain," she continued. "He showed us humans can absorb fear without returning it. This is a greater power." The officials exchanged glances, recognizing the profound implications. If this approach worked with traumatized Vilari children, it might work with other displaced species. The methodology could transform post-conflict rehabilitation throughout. The sector dot, after the delegation departed, promising increased funding and expanded programs, Eli found himself alone with Dr. Naismith in the staff room. "They're calling you Soul Whisperer now," she said, scrolling through her tablet. "The nickname's gone viral in the settlement. You'll be insufferable after this." Eli laughed. "I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just ... He searched for the words. "Showed them what humans really are," she finished for him. "At our best, anyway." That evening, as New Haven's 3 moons rose in sequence, Eli sat on the shelter's observation deck. The air carried the scent of alien blossoms from the newly planted garden, a project the Vilari children had initiated themselves. The door slid open behind him. Lumi approached, no longer hesitant, and sat beside him. At 12 Vilari cycles, equivalent to 9 Earth years, she had already been designated a junior cultural liaison, helping new arrivals adjust. "The younger ones asked me a question today," she said, her English now nearly flawless. "They wanted to know why humans smile when they're happy. I realized I didn't know." Eli considered this. "It's instinctive for us. But I suppose it's to show others our happiness, to share it." Lumi nodded thoughtfully. Her skin rippled with emerald her thinking pattern. Then, with careful concentration, she arranged her facial features into an approximation of a human. Smile. The expression looked strange on Vilari features, but the intent behind it was unmistakable. "Like this?" she asked. Eli felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Yes," he managed. "Exactly like that." Below them, in the common room, human and Vilari children played together, their shadows merging in the evening light. Not perfect, not without occasional misunderstandings, but genuine, real. Fear hadn't disappeared overnight. Some scars would take generations to heal. But here, in this small corner of a vast and often violent galaxy, something profound had changed. Through grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but through the simple, radical act of patience, of presence, of one being saying to another across the gulf of difference, I will wait for you to trust me. However long it takes. In a universe where speed was valued and force respected, Eli had deployed humanity's most underestimated power. The courage to be gentle in a harsh world. The soul whisperer had spoken not with words, but with silence. And the children had answered. Asterisk.